and welcome back to a new video. So as you can see, you can't see me, but you can see the film Listography book, Your Life in Movie Lists. Now, my mum got me this book for Christmas, and as soon as I opened it up and looked inside of it, I knew that I kind of wanted to do a series of videos using this book. So basically in this book, it has a suggestion for a bunch of lists that you can make. I've picked one out, which I've put with a little ribbon to discuss in this video. And I've got my little giraffe pen, and I'm just going to go through and discuss some movies with you using the film Listography book. So I thought it would be fun and something a bit different, and this is the first of these videos. So if you'd like to see more, you can let me know and I will make more of them. But the first page that I've chose is list your favourite films from the 80s. I'm not sure if you can see that. So that's what's on that side, but then on the other side we have a nice illustration of Pretty in Pink, which is a John Hughes film, and then it says there Pretty in Pink, screenplay by John Hughes, because of course this is 80s films area. So as you can see, it's blank at the moment. I have made my list already. There's 9 films I'm going to talk about today. I think there's 9. But I didn't want to have them all listed out. I wanted to go through them one by one. And I have put them into different categories. So, the first 3 films are going to be 80s films that I grew up watching and loved. So, the first one, I'll just have to turn it to right. The first one is a movie that I really loved, and I still loved. Still love, not loved. And that is The Burbs, which I believe, let me just check, I've got it on my phone, is 1989, so it just makes the list. Yeah, 1989. So 1989. Okay, so The Burbs is a Tom Hanks film, and when I was growing up I really did love Tom Hanks. I've watched a lot of Tom Hanks films throughout the years, and I watched a lot of Tom Hanks films growing up, and The Burbs was definitely one of my favourites. When I was younger I really loved kind of weird films, I suppose you'd say. The Burbs isn't that weird, but it is pretty weird. It's basically about this guy who has a week vacation, played by Tom Hanks, and so his wife, I'm pretty sure this is, either he just wants to spend it around the neighbourhood relaxing, or his wife does. I can't quite remember. I think it's him. I think he just wants to relax in the neighbourhood and not go anywhere. And then he kind of starts kind of spying on his neighbours, and this kind of almost neighbourhood, I'm going to say neighbourhood watch, but not even that, kind of neighbourhood spying situation begins. And they think something really weird's going on with the neighbours, and it's just such a funny film. I loved all the characters of the neighbours, and I just watched this one over and over again when I was growing up. I thought it was just so funny and so weird, and it was unlike anything that I'd ever seen. And still today, it feels such a strong memory. When I think of it, I can pretty much remember most of this movie because I watched it so much. So if you've never seen The Burbs, because I feel like it's one that not many people talk about when they talk about Tom Hanks, or the 80s actually. It's not kind of a main go-to 80s film or a main go-to Tom Hanks film. So I would definitely recommend The Burbs. It is one of my favourites. But it does have that thing where obviously I grew up watching it, so would I enjoy it as much now? I'm not sure. But I did watch it a couple of years back and I still thought it was fantastic. So that's The Burbs. The next one on my list is also starring Tom Hanks, and that is Big. This is another one that I just absolutely loved when I was younger. I thought it was the best, and I've again watched it. That's 1988. How funny, this close together. 1988. Yeah, I've watched it, since a couple of years ago, and I still think it's fantastic. I don't know which one I prefer. They're both very different. Obviously, I'm presuming most people have seen Big. It's about this young boy who goes to this fortune thing and wishes to be big, and then he basically becomes an adult, but he's obviously still a child inside, and it's just fantastic. And Tom Hanks is brilliant. It has the famous piano scene, you know, the large piano, and it's just great. It was, again, a movie that I watched over and over and I loved. I don't think that I owned it for a while. I think I used to watch this one on TV a lot, and it was a movie that kind of felt like it was on TV a lot. I actually think the last time I watched it was when it was on TV, even though now I do own it. I just spotted it and I was like, oh, Big's on. It's kind of one of those films that you'll want to watch even if you catch it halfway through. You kind of want to carry on watching it. So yeah, so that's Big. I really, really loved that one, and again, it definitely makes the list of my top favourites. And then the final one, which goes into the list of ones that I loved growing up, also begins with B, which is really funny because they all seem to. It's Beetlejuice. Now, Beetlejuice, I think, was my favourite of the three. I honestly thought that this was the coolest, weirdest movie ever. And I don't know how old I was when I first watched it, but I know that I was like, what is this? And it's 1988 as well. Just checking those. So, I presume most people, again, have seen Beetlejuice. And I actually always forget the beginning of the film, and I'm not really sure why. But I remember more than anything, the first time I watched the film, thinking things were weird when they kind of got to that house. And I think they can't get out of the house. I don't know. I haven't watched Beetlejuice for a few years, whereas when I was younger I watched it loads. And these two I've seen in the past couple of years, but Beetlejuice I haven't seen for a while. And I don't know why, because it's such a brilliant film, and obviously it's directed by Tim Burton, and it's just all kinds of fantastic weirdness. But yeah, I remember certain parts of it really stick out to me, and then other parts kind of go amiss. But I think the thing was, for me, what I loved about it so much when I was younger was Winona Ryder's character, and obviously the kind of end scene with jump into line, what's it called, that song. I loved the song, and I just thought that was so cool and so amazing, and I just loved it so much. And then I would just watch that again and again. And I remember at first thinking I wasn't really sure about Beetlejuice as the character, because I wasn't too old, and I kind of thought he was maybe a bit too creepy, but then I just kind of fell in love with the film and watched it a whole bunch. So Beetlejuice was definitely, and is definitely, one of my favourite films from the 80s, but it's kind of funny because these are all really late 80s, which, I don't know, that's just how it happened. Okay, so my next one, let's have a look what it is on my list. Okay, so when you think 80s, I think John Hughes is a big 80s point. Like, he's just, you know, a great guy. I love John Hughes' films, and my favourite one, which I will show you in a second, I'm just trying to find the year. Okay, yeah, also begins with a B. What a surprise. I don't know why this is, it's just how it happened. And it is The Breakfast Club, which I feel like is really stereotypical. Like, but it is. It's my favourite John Hughes film, I have to say. And it's 1985. Yeah, The Breakfast Club, I love. The first time I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. I love this. It's brilliant. And it was, I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong, it was the first, and if it wasn't, it was definitely the second John Hughes film I ever saw. And after watching Breakfast Club, I was like, right, I now need to watch all of John Hughes' films. There's still a couple I haven't seen. I haven't seen Some Kind of Wonderful, but I do own that. But yeah, I kind of went on like this John Hughes binge watch, and I just thought he was fantastic. And I just loved them so much. But The Breakfast Club still remains to be my favourite. And I love the scene, or scenes, in Pitch Perfect where they talk about Breakfast Club. I feel like I really loved that movie for that purpose, and then I kind of really fell in love with Pitch Perfect and watched that a million times. But I do like the Breakfast Club references in other films. I think it's always really exciting. So Breakfast Club is my favourite John Hughes film. Yes, I'm definitely sure. If you haven't seen it, I feel like everyone has seen it. So if you haven't seen any of these I'm going to list, I definitely recommend them all. Okay, so the next section that I have is 3 films that I would say are kind of 80s family adventure fun, if that makes sense. And the first one, thankfully it doesn't begin with B anymore. We've changed things up. It is the Goonies. Now, the Goonies I love. I didn't see the Goonies until probably, let me think, maybe 7 years ago. Also 1985. How funny. Yeah, I'd say, let's think, maybe even less. Maybe 6 years ago. I didn't see the Goonies until I was maybe in my later teens. And I might have been like 16 or something. And I loved it, and I always wished I would have seen it earlier, because it's definitely a fun kids movie. But it's kind of obviously fun for everybody. But it's such a good film, and the point where I was like, yes, I love this, it's brilliant, is when the Cyndi Lauper song comes on. I think it's called Good Enough, and I was just thinking, I am just enjoying this so much. It's very nostalgic, even when you haven't seen it. I don't know if that really makes sense. I watched it and felt like there was nostalgia, and again, I wasn't born in the 80s, so it wasn't even like it was 80s nostalgia. It just was kind of random, fun nostalgia. But yeah, I really loved it, and I watched it, and then I watched it kind of a bunch all in one go, and then I haven't seen it for a little while, but I do need to watch it again soon. Are they doing a remake, or was that just a random thing that was gonna happen and then didn't? I'm really not sure. I don't think that I would enjoy a remake, to be honest. I feel like a remake wouldn't be the same, because it wouldn't have the fun 80s, I don't know, 80s-ness. I think that's what made the film for me, is that I liked its 80s vibes. But yeah, so that's The Goonies, which is a great fun family film, and it's one that I feel like on this list. Then again, The Breakfast Club I probably saw around the same time, because I wasn't really that young when I saw The Breakfast Club. Now, going into one that I saw when I was younger, of course, everybody saw this one, and it is, of course, such a classic, E.T. E.T. is so cute, and I love it. It's 1982, so it's our earliest on the list so far. But yeah, E.T. is just a staple for the 80s, really, and for anybody, it's obviously a Steven Spielberg film, and let me think. I don't know if it's my favourite Steven Spielberg film. I'd have to look at all his films on a list. But it's definitely, it's definitely up there. I think it still today is a cute, fun family film, and it's really sad. And I love now looking back on it and seeing young Drew Barrymore. I think that's so fantastic. I love her. And yeah, I just think it's a really good film, and I really do love E.T. I haven't seen it for a little while, but I feel like it's not, maybe it's probably one of the films, like I watched it when I was, watching The Burbs, Big and Beetlejuice, but it's not one that I watched over and over and over, and I don't really know why that is, because I still love it. I think it's a brilliant film, but it's not one that I feel the need to continually watch, but I feel like it's always there with you. Like you can remember E.T. pretty much from start to finish and feel like, yes, that's a fantastic film. And then you can watch it again a few years later and just, watch it every few years. I think it's one of those type of films. But yeah, obviously everyone's seen E.T. and it's kind of a obvious one. So the third one in this adventure, fun, family films one is Indiana Jones. Oh, hold on. I started saying it before I've written it down. That's going to take me ages. So it's Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. So Indiana Jones, Raiders of the, oh no, ran out of space, Lost Ark, which is 1981. 1981. Okay, now I love all the Indiana Jones films, but I haven't seen that new one with Shia LaBeouf. I'm really not sure what that one is about. I really need to watch that, but I don't know if it'll have the same greatness about it. But Indiana Jones is a fantastic film, and I feel like it has a lot of childhood memories for me. I remember watching Indiana Jones with my dad. I remember not ever being able to remember which is which, and I still really can't. I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark though a couple of years ago. I was going to do a whole rewatch of them all, but I never managed to make the rewatch. But I kind of feel like I should just put Indiana Jones as a whole. but I suppose I'd need to watch the 2 and 3 to confirm that they're on the same level as number 1. I feel like they always work, 'cause like I say, I always got them muddled up. I don't know why. But, of course, again, we all know that that's kind of one of the ones that's going to be on the list. It's kind of one of those classic ones. Now, the next one is a film that, for a while, I was sure was my favourite horror film. And it is, of course, The Shining. But now, I don't know if it is. I don't know if it's my favourite. I still think it's fantastic, obviously. And it's 1980, which again, we keep getting a old one on the list. I watched The Shining for the first time probably 6 years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago. And I watched it and I thought, oh my gosh, that is the best film. I think it's amazing and I love it and yada yada. And then I watched it again, and then I watched it again. And maybe I've watched it about 4 or 5 times now. And on the 4th or 5th time that I watched it, I thought, I still think it's a brilliant, amazing film. You know, I've put out my favourite films. But I don't know if it's my favourite horror film. And I don't even know if it's more of a psychological horror, I suppose you'd say. And I feel like the level, well, I guess there are some bits actually that are pretty horrific. I don't like the part where he goes into the room and the woman is in the bath. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but that, I don't like that bit. I think that grosses me out. Which sounds weird if you haven't seen the film, but if you have, you'll know what I mean. And yeah, I suppose surely we must class it as a horror film. I think these are the kind of films I like, though. It's kind of weird. And the ending, I feel like I never fully have wrapped my head around it. And I think that's why I love it so much. But I have to say, as Stephen King adaptations, I prefer Misery, I think. I've only seen Misery twice, and I've seen The Shining more, so I think I need to rewatch Misery and assess that situation. So, yeah, but one film that isn't on this list, which I wouldn't say is one of my favourites from the 80s, actually, let me just check it even is from the 80s. I would say it is, if not, it's got to be the 70s, because I don't think it's the 90s. Let me look. I'm looking it up. Trust now the internet to be slow. Oh, okay, hold on. It's a film that I watched when I was quite young, and it was kind of the first horror film that I ever saw. And I remember thinking, yeah, 1989. And it's Pet Sematary, which is another Stephen King adaptation, which I definitely found scarier than The Shining, but I watched it when I was quite young. I watched it on a VHS that we taped off the TV. And I remember thinking, like, oh, I was creeped out by it, and I remember thinking about it for ages afterwards. And I've watched it since, and it's not really that scary, but it's an interesting concept, and I do like it. So I do enjoy the Stephen King adaptations. I don't know if Misery's 80s, I'd put that on my list. I didn't really obviously think about this too much. Misery's not 80s, it's 1991. Misery is fantastic though. Okay, so now we'll move on to my final film on the list. Now obviously I've not filled the book out because I do want some space, because knowing me, I'll forget something and I'll be like, oh no, I forgot this film and it's the best thing ever. So the final film is going to fall into the category of films I only watched recently from the 80s but love, and it is The Lost Boys. So I watched The Lost Boys a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, and it's from 1987, and I thought, yeah, okay, I'll watch The Lost Boys. I'd always been a bit put off by the vampire kind of idea of it. I always thought I'm not going to really enjoy this, but I enjoyed it so much. And of course I've only seen it once, so it's a bit presumptuous to put it on my favourite 80s list, but I feel like it is. I feel like I'd really want to watch it again, and I really fell in love with it. And I think, again, I loved it for the 80s vibes and the music and everything about it. I just really, really loved. I would definitely love, in the comments below, more 80s movies recommendations. Obviously, this isn't all the... I've seen a lot more 80s movies than this. This is just like a sample of some ones I enjoyed, you know, some ones I grew up with. Favourite John Hughes, some family ones, horror, and a recent one I've watched. This is just kind of a little sample. of ones that I enjoy. But yeah, I only recently saw The Lost Boys and I really wish I would have seen it earlier. But at least now I know I can watch it many more times and I really, really did love it. So I definitely feel like it's okay being on my favourites. I feel like it's up there with the others and I can't wait to rewatch it. So that was my list of my favourite 80s films. Let me know in the comments below some of your favourites and some 80s movies that you'd recommend me to watch, because maybe I haven't watched them. The Lost Boys is a classic, but I still haven't seen it yet. Thumbs up if you enjoy these film listographies and would like to see more of them. And then I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you then. Goodbye!